Okay, we're on the lunch break of the first day of questioning of the undercover police officer Mark Jenner, who infiltrated the Colin Roach Centre, numerous anti-fascist and anti-racist groups, police accountability campaigns, family justice campaigns, and trade union activity. He's been asked further questions since the last break about his reporting and the way in which he's characterised those he reported on. I'm joined with Dave Smith from Blacklist Support Group.
Hello, Tom.
Hello. What have you made of? I noticed you're wearing a UCAT top. That's the trade union that Mark Jenner joined when he was deployed undercover and infiltrated. What have you made of what he's been saying over the last little bit?
Yeah, I mean, it's the first time I've seen him for many years. He's changed.
yeah, somewhat.
His demeanour's changed. His haircut's changed. He hasn't lost his hair, but it's gone grey. Yeah, he's talking more than I thought he would, to be honest. I wasn't quite. I mean, he's quite unrepentant about his position.
Very unrepentant.
He's not really apologising for anything he said. No, I did this. Yes, I spied on these. This is the information I found out. I think Counsel for the Inquiry's doing quite a good job in questioning him, to be honest. David Barr's doing very well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like you say, he's been very unrepentant. He's been asked a lot of how he came to characterise certain things in certain ways in his reports, and his standard answer for that is, I was put close to Mark Metcalfe. I reported whatever he told me. I wasn't present at this event. I wasn't present at that event, but Mark Metcalfe was. I spoke to Mark Metcalfe. Whatever he said went in. I knew that he was prone to exaggeration. I still reported whatever he said.
Yeah, there's a lot of. I mean, one of the things in one of the last reports we saw towards the end was a report about a member of my union, UCAT, which, here we go, wearing the badge, which I was a member of. Mark Jenner was a member of the same union as me, and he describes someone that we both know, and I know who he is, and Mark Jenner knows who he is. I can't say it because he's got an anonymity order, and this thing described him as the reason he joined the Colin Roach Centre is because of his union activities. Describes the fact that he was in UCAT. Describes the fact that he was in the Building Worker Group and distributed their magazine called Building Worker. But then goes on to describe him as very violent and, a previous member of Red Action kind of thing, which I'm not sure whether he was or not, but, but then goes on to describe how Mark Metcalfe and Dr. Graham Smith both considered him, because he was working class and violent, they really, really appealed to him and they appreciated it. And, sorry, this gets back to your point about the kind of reporting he's done. And Barr says to him, "Well, how did you know Graham Smith thought that of him? Because Graham Smith,
a very different character,
very, very different character to Mark Metcalfe and to this supposed violent anarchist." And he basically says, "Well, I've only ever met Graham Smith once." So you've only ever met him once that you can remember, yet you're writing reports about him, basically saying that he's endorsing, these supposedly, violent hooligans, kind of stuff.
I mean, he says that he wouldn't characterise Graham Smith in that way himself. Though he is the original author of the report, in that he gave the oral information to the back office, they wrote it up and they must have added it in. I mean, this is something we've seen from so many undercover officers who blame anything that's in the report that they don't want to stand behind. Oh, that must have been added in by the person who wrote it up. What's interesting, and something he does stand behind, is that the reasoning for why this person with privacy was violently anti-police was that he had some civil litigation against a police officer from Stoke Newington Police Station, which we know at the time was incredibly corrupt, and therefore was violently anti-police.
Yeah, this thing about individuals or groups taking litigation against the police has come up time and again, so far during this morning's evidence. First of all, we saw a special branch report on Celia Stubbs, the widow of Blair Peach, who was killed by the police.
Well, that made her violently anti-police herself.
Yeah. But the actual report says that she turns up and assists in advice sessions for the Colin Roach Centre, which is like a community centre doing sort of advice for people, on a whole range of issues. But because she was taking this, because her partner had been murdered by the police, she was violently anti-police, and she was taking litigation against him. Once again, later on, there's they talk about some of the Black Justice campaigns whose family members have died at the hands of the police or in police custody, and they're doing litigation against the police. And once again, why do you think there'll be disorder? Because of because of this anti-police position. And once again, this construction worker, member of UCAT, is described as violently anti-police because of his a civil claim that he's got in, and it's going. And Graham Smith again, it's like you're taking a claim against the police very often because the police have been violent to you. Very often you win the case. Subsequently, this is one of the things that really. But therefore you're described as being violently anti-police. One of the things that would be really, really interesting in this is would be for the police to actually go for the inquiry to actually go and look at the facts of what actually happened in the end.
Yes,
because
very much.
There's a great
That's the problem.
There's a great quote by one of the journalists who wrote the stuff about the Watergate crisis, where he says you can look impartial by, he does this quote about umbrellas, and it pouring with rain. And a journalist, I can't remember it, but is it Bob Woodward? Bob Woodward. And he does this little story that he tells people when he's training them to be journalists. He says, look, you can be impartial as a journalist, and you can say, look, I've interviewed one person and they said, oh, it's pouring with rain outside. And you can interview someone else saying, no, it's not pouring with rain outside, and there's a big argument, and you report both sides of the argument about whether or not you need an umbrella or not. He said, what your job is as a journalist is to do is not to just report both sides of the argument, but to go and look out the window and see if it's raining or not, actually, check the facts. And what this inquiry doesn't seem to be doing, what the inquiry does is it gets the police version of events and it's written down on a police document, and then it gives it to the the activists, and they show them the same document, and there's an argument about who's true or not. Well, quite honestly, they could have just gone, you've got the document. What they could have done is gone back and looked at press reports at the time, or arrest records after time, to see whether these people were documented, to see whether they won their claim against the police or not, that kind of stuff, which would therefore put the entire thing grounded in some, the triangulation, I think they call it, actually based on facts rather than two sides of the. And I think the more they look at the actual evidence, the actual, objective truth that happened, that was, I'm not saying the press is always objective truth, but, rather than just, listening to an undercover police officer's version of it, and they're not doing that. That's the bit they're not doing.
I mean, I think worse than that, there was a whole bunch of questions about the Brian Douglas justice campaign, by Brian Douglas, who was murdered by police. And within that, there's reports about this demonstration, which Mark Jenner was a steward on. And the way it's written up is that there's a lot of talk about, there was the danger of public disorder because of non-political, irate black youths. And we see from the report that there was no violence on this demonstration. In fact, the closest it seemed to get that was one black police officer got a lot of abuse from the crowd, and there was a claim that he was going to get beaten by clubs, which actually turned out to be the handles of placards. But that also that stewards intervened and stopped this from happening, so the demonstration policed itself. But when he was being questioned about this, Mark Jenner referred to, there were some scuffles along the way near the Oval, I think. And I was like, well, you didn't put that in the report at the time. Why are you bringing it up now? Supposedly, like it's 40 odd years later, you're saying, there were some other scuffles, which I didn't bother to report at the time. And it's just a nonsense, just an invented nonsense. I mean, he wasn't pulled out on this. But I mean, he was asked quite a few questions about the way that he like typified, or he said, well, black youths, of course, the black youths would be angry with police because there was this so-called police violence that resulted in the death of Brian Douglas, as if somehow Brian Douglas had spontaneously like killed himself.
Yeah. There's a report exactly that. There's a report that talks about, like, you know, irate black youth who are non-political, you know, and one of the questions would large numbers of black youth being present increase the likelihood of violence? You know, in your opinion, and he says, well, in this situation, yes, you know, and throughout, you know, a number of, would you describe black youth as being likely to cause violence as a racial stereotype? He says, oh, no, not at all. You know, so well, what is it? It's one or the other. Why did you think there would be some potential for violence? And one of his answers was, well, people were in fear because they thought they were going to be attacked. Well, why would that be? And his answer was, well, nobody trusts the police, not just the black youth. You know, nobody trusts the police. You know, I mean, basically all Londoners, I think, would be a good way of describing that. So,
I mean, what he was trying not to say, but what the inference he was making was, it was a perfectly reasonable thing to be angry with the police because the police were killing people, and therefore, of course, people were angry about it. And like it was, but I mean, what was really funny was that this comment that was in his report is like, well, this is like self-evident, obvious stuff. Yes, black people are going to be annoyed that the police are killing black people. Why do you need an undercover police officer to go in to the organization and then be able to report that? That's the only pertinent piece of information about public order. He said very clearly that, the demonstration organizers wanted it to be peaceful, that it was going to be well stewarded, as it turned out to be. So the only bit of like pertinent information about public disorder that he could provide was that, well, black people won't like it, the fact that the police have killed a black person, so they might be annoyed. Not something you need an undercover officer for.
No, and I think quite a lot of this stuff, quite honestly, is the more we see it, the more we hear about it, a lot of this stuff could have just been hoovered up. A lot of it's just in the public domain. A lot of the information that they're providing is pretty much in the public domain. If you went and, all of the organisations, all of the campaigns that they were dealing with were publishing leaflets or publishing pamphlets or organising public meetings. You didn't need an undercover police officer embedded in somebody's life for 5 years in relation to Allison, spying on trade unions. His suggestion that, he never went to a single union event or a single union meeting is quite honestly just nonsense. I mean, I've been to union events where I've been on picket lines with him. So, I mean, where he wasn't involved in any union activity at all, it's just bollocks, basically. And hopefully, this will, come up. I mean, I've seen there are special branch reports that are going to come up in this later on in the evidence where he's reporting on industrial disputes. So,
Yeah, he says that Bob Lambert told him within the first 6 months of his deployment that the SDS was no longer interested in trade union activity. Yet this, from what I can gather, is before he joins UCAT. Because he didn't join the UCAT initially, he felt he didn't need to, but then he only did so that it would further his deployment inside the building workers group. But like, he's a member of UCAT for 2 years. The idea that, like, after he's been told that the SDS isn't interested in trade union activity, supposedly, seems a bit strange. He also claims that he was unaware that his reports were being sent to the security services, despite working in the back office and being aware that reports were sent to the security services. Now he claims, only in certain circumstances. Yeah, I've yet to see an SDS report that, from the time period before it stopped, that didn't have send to box 500 in the corner.
Yeah, and also, I think this whole Jenner really downplays his role in spying on trade unions, massively downplays it. And the idea that, oh no, it's, last, was it last week or the week before with Peter Francis, it was quite open that individual trade unions have got their own special branch file, and you don't get a special branch registry file unless special branch deem you as an individual or the organisation is as an organisation is considered to be subversive. So with Peter Francis, they did a very specific example about NATFE, which is the lecturers union. It's now part of UCU. Special branch have got a registry file on NATFE. Every time you come across someone from NATFE at a meeting, they're a valid person to spy on, even if they're not particularly engaged in anything that's subversive, because NATFE themselves have got a registry file. UCAT have got registry file. I mean, it's already been disclosed in documentation. I'm not breaking any anonymity orders or restriction orders here, and it's certainly going to come up later on that UCAT have got a registry file. Loads of other, the National Union of Rail Workers, others have got registry files on them, and so this idea that I just the special branch weren't interested in trade unions at all, I find stretching the truth. And the fact
it's laughable.
I never went to any UCAT meetings. Literally his own witness statement, which is now published on the inquiry website, talks about him going to union meetings and going to union conferences and that kind of stuff. So he's contradicting himself. He's even contradicting his own witness statement that he's only written just a couple of months ago. So
yeah, no, it's a nonsense. I mean, it does beg the question, doesn't it? Really, I mean, because we have seen all the SDS officers throughout the SDS's history. Reporting on trade unions has been part of the course. It's part of what they do. Yet they are very sensitive about it. They want to downplay the amount of spying on trade union movement that they did. Why is that?
I think for the exact same reason that they try and downplay the spying on the Black family justice campaigns. Their argument is, oh no, what we're doing is spying on extreme left-wing activists who are all just cashing in on, the police killing black people. And if we spy on the campaign, it's not really to spy on the campaign. They're just collateral intrusion. Is that if we spy on trade unionists, we're not really spying on trade unions. They're just collateral intrusion on the general hoovering up of stuff that we've done. One of the examples that was talked about earlier on today was Trevor Monaville. John Trevor's dad is sitting over there, 5 feet away from us, and clearly they were spying on John. They were spying on the family. When they're spying on the Brian Douglas family campaign, there's a report on Donald Douglas, the brother. They're spying on him. There's no need to name him, but there's multiple reports on the family justice campaign. The same with the trade unions. They clearly are hoovering up information about the trade unions. They clearly are hoovering up information about black justice campaigns. And it's not collateral intrusion. That is, anybody who's prepared to stand up, to challenge the status quo, whether that's on trade unionism, whether that's on environmentalism, whether it's anti-racism, whether that's whatever it happens to be, you're seen as fair game. You're seen as fair game, and it's not a byproduct. They're specific. When the pattern is they're repeatedly spying on black family justice campaigns, that's clearly part of what they're doing. When they're repeatedly spying on trade unions, that's clearly what they're doing. And the smoke screen of they're only spying on the left. We need to get away from that because it's a police narrative that justifies spying on everybody.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think you're completely right. Overall, though, what's your impression of Mark Jenner as a witness? What have you made of him?
He's very confident. He's very self-confident. He's got an arrogance of an ex-police officer, and he clearly thinks he's done nothing wrong. There's no contrition whatsoever.
None.
There's no, I don't think he feels he's got anything to apologise for, and he has in his own mind. One of the things I know you must have discussed this earlier on, but I think one of the very first questions that he was asked, at the very beginning of this morning was, about, how it affected his family relationship, and his relationship with his wife. He says, was your very, very long periods away from your former wife due to you having a relationship with Alison, which originally he denied, but now is in no position to deny it. He said, no, not at all. It wasn't because I was going on holiday. It wasn't because I was going on to Vietnam or to Thailand or to Israel with Alison. It was because I was attending lots of meetings. And it's just like, oh, for God's sake, man. I mean, just stop it, And this, we have to make this point that we're not being prurient.
No.
This isn't about someone having an affair. Lots of people have affairs.
Yeah.
That's not what it's about.
It's abuse.
It's about the state know this is going on. This is state sanctioned abuse. That is the issue, not the fact that someone had a fleeting relationship or in this case a 5-year relationship. And Alison would be the first person to say that.
Oh, she was saying a lot of things. I did try and get Alison to do one of these videos, but she's not in the mood today. But yeah, she had quite a lot to say throughout. I mean, it's he is a very much a copper. Certain people have got like much more of a the look of being a cop, and he certainly got that. We're going to hear more from him this afternoon. We're going to hear more from him for the next couple of days. Is there anything particular you're hoping to hear from him?
Well, obviously, I'm very much looking for his discussion about spying on the trade unions, which I think is, it's untenable. I was at the picket line with him at Dow Jensen down in near Waterloo, to the JJ Fast Foods picket line, where he's got a report on, some of the core participants in this inquiry were in the trade union strand, Brian Higgins and John Jones. Were on the picket line with him down in Southwark, London Borough of Southwark, which he reports on. Both of them have passed away. So I'm here sort of championing their cause, and other trade union members who he reports on really sneeringly, really dismissively in reports, who are not core participants in this inquiry. I'm here sort of waving the banner for them, really. And also the anti-fascism stuff is going to come up at some point as well. And looking at many of the reports that he's filed, I was on a number of those particular protests and demonstrations. But as he quite clearly has already mentioned here a lot, the stewards very often are there to prevent violence, not to instigate the violence, and the violence that they're predicting is often from the police or from the fascists, not the other way around.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, we'll have more of Mark Jenner this afternoon. We'll do another video in the break and at the end of the day. Thanks for joining. You are able to watch. He hasn't made a single breach yet, which is pretty good going. He came quite close a couple of times, actually. I don't know if people picked up what he was inferring that suggested there might have been a breach if he just said one more thing. But there hasn't been any breaches yet. So yeah, if you want to watch on YouTube, you can do. It'll be a new link this afternoon. I'll share that link on Twitter when I get back to tweeting when we go back in. But yeah, thanks for joining, and we'll see you all in a bit. Cheers for now.
#SpyCops.